phone, spend 3 minutes, and present public comment to the committee.
I have Mark Spar.
What's that?
Mark Spar is the first one I have.
Okay, Mark, you're first. And it looks like we got a few more people coming in, so if you have public comment, please let us know and we will begin. Mark, it's your agenda.
Thank you. So you should have a packet in front of you. So these comments I'm going to read out. In 2019, after many contentious meetings with the Planning Commission, LUTC, and full City Council meetings, the Council passed the rezone of the Milton Road area. As part of that approval, Council directed staff to eliminate the extension of 19th Way and 376th Street from Regency Woods development to the Milton Road. Staff reported back that a traffic study needed to be performed to eliminate the extension from the comprehensive master plan. A traffic study was approved at that time, but has only been recently started. The current plan is to complete the study and to have that inform a change to the comprehensive master plan in 2023. A change in the comprehensive master plan in 2023 will come too late. A developer is working with landowners in the city to develop a plat for the new housing in the Milton Road rezone area. In order for the process to move forward, the plat needs to be approved before the change in the comprehensive master plan. In the attached letter, I don't have the correct page reference, the city's planning staff is directing the engineer of the developer of the Milton Road rezone area to make a connection to complete the connection between 376 and the Milton Road in opposition to the direction given by the commission in 2019. They also direct the engineer to do a traffic study that the city has promised to do. We ask that the LUTC recommend to the full council that the mayor and the commission direct the planning manager to eliminate any connection between the Milton rezone properties and Regency Woods. There are examples where Federal Way has allowed exemptions to planning rules that can be found in Regency Woods alone. According to the FWRC, exceptions can be made if the improvement as required would not be harmonious with the existing street improvements, would not function properly or safely, or would not be advantageous to the neighborhood or city as a whole. Also, unusual topographic or physical conditions preclude the construction of the improvements as required. The road extension would require restriction within a wetland or a wetland buffer. The extension would add significant truck traffic in front of an existing tot lot, a safety concern. With those reasons, and for the other reasons stated at several public meetings on the subject, I'm asking the LUTC and the council to direct the Public Works Director to grant an exemption to the block perimeter rules in conjunction with any connection of new development to Regency Woods so that no extension of 19th Way would occur. In December of 2021, there were 2 accidents on Highway 99 between Spring Valley and Porter Way that closed all lanes of 99. During that time, several trucks drove down 19th Way looking for them. Attached in this is a petition of over 260 names asking you to do this action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment?
We have 2 more comments.
Oh.
The next one is from Helen.
Oh, gotcha. You're going to keep prop me along. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What? Did you say it was going to be long? Okay, I'm here to address a couple things on your agenda here with E. The one is the plat alteration, and I've mentioned that before. Decision maker for, oh, I have the wrong page. Anyway, it's to take away the decision for the final plat from the council to the city planner. The second one is plat alteration, and this is kind of new because now it's saying the decision maker for the preliminary plat is going to a hearing examiner. I don't know who that is, and I don't know when that was passed. But so basically it's saying all the decisions want to go to the planning department. The issue I have with that is that I know that most of council and most of the planning commission are in favor of condominiums and not apartments. But I think the planning department seems to have a different vision. I think they think that building lots of apartments in Federal Way is the way to go. Now, those of us that have lived here a long time have seen what too many apartments have done to this city. There's higher crime. We're now referred to as Felony Way on a lot of the Facebook pages. The schools are a mess, where it's, some of the lowest in the state as far as standards. And right now, the way it stands, unless there's a zone change required, and this is already in place, if it's a multi-residential complex applying to build property zoned for multi-residential, it only has to be approved by the planning department. So I've heard in the past that Federal Way put a stop to the apartments, and I don't know if that's true or how you did it, but I think we need to do that again, and we need to put something in the documents and in the instructions to the planning commission that we have only condos built. Hopefully maybe just 1 and 2 bedrooms to give the schools a break for a while, and RM 2400 to ensure we keep our tree canopy. So like I said, I don't know if it's true that you guys managed to do that, and I don't know how you go about that, but if we don't do that, we're just gonna end up with more and more apartment buildings. So, that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Next person?
The next person we have is Jane.
Good evening. I don't have a lot to say, but I'm just in agreement with what Helen said. I'm really concerned with the final decision going to a director or the other executive, whatever that was called.
Could you use the microphone over
Yeah,
towards
I'm
your
sorry.
mouth? Thank you very much.
So basically, I'm in agreement with Helen. I'm concerned about the decision going from the city council to a director or an executive director. And also, the concern is, as I'm looking at explanation that we got from Brian Davis, is that the flat alterations proposed to move from the council to the hearing examiner. That's what she was referring to. That's kind of concerning too. What alterations are we talking about? So if there's an initial decision made by the city council, and then it goes to the director for the final approval, and then there's alterations, what does that mean? Could that change everything from, let's say, an initial decision of condominiums to, okay, now we're gonna, maybe throw some apartments in there? I don't know. So that's a concern. I have a concern with any of these kind of decisions based on what's been happening in Federal Way, and we don't want more apartments. And I prefer to have decisions made by elected officials, not people that are unelected. I want my voice represented, and I feel like we're going to lose that if we make that decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment that we have? Anything to read into the record?
None that I have.
Anybody else out there that wants to take the microphone for a minute or two? Okay. Seeing none, we will end public comment. And I'm assuming both of the testimonies, the last two are on item E, where that probably is falling into the discussion. And now we'll move on to committee business. Is there any business anybody on the committee would like to bring up?
Yeah, I would just say that with the first testimony, he didn't have time to quite finish it, but it looks like there's a petition here with, 200 and something names from people in the community in it. So I'll just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's a good punctuation mark. That means that we're going to need to talk about it more when 260 people are talking to us about it. Okay, we'll move on to item A, which is approval of the minutes from the March 7th, 2021 meeting. Is there anything anybody wants to bring up, or do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Chair Dobie, I move the approval of the minutes, March 7th, 2022, as is submitted.
And I'll second it.
And we'll take a vote. So it is 2022, not 2021. Thank you for catching that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we've adopted number A, and now we'll go to Southwest 320th Street Preservation Project Acceptance. Mr. Mulkey, thank you. This will be an action item.
Chair Doby, council and committee members, my name is John Mulkey. I'm a senior engineer for the city of Federal Way. I'm presenting the Southwest 320th Preservation Project acceptance for approval. Pardon my voice. Policy question is, should the city council accept the Southwest 320th Street Preservation Project constructed by Miles Resources LLC as complete? Background information, this project was overlaid Southwest 320th between 11th Avenue Southwest and 3rd Place Southwest, and included sidewalk repairs and ADA upgrades to get it up to compliance. Just a few pictures of what it looked like before and after, and just different striping on this one, and also some repairs to the sidewalk that we did. And the construction contract, we had approved, I have to move something here. The approved construction contract of $641,616.86. The final construction amount of $570,369.98. And we were below budget by $71,246.88. And that was based on the approved budget from November 17th of 2020, including the 10% contingency. So financial impacts, the city council must accept the work as complete to meet state Department of Revenue and State Department of Labor and Industries requirements. The costs were included in the approved budget under Project Capital 214, and part of that was grant funded from an FHWA grant in amount of $518,020, and the remainder was funded by motor vehicle excise tax. So the options considered are: 1, authorize final acceptance of the Southwest 320th Street Preservation Project as constructed by Miles Resources LLC in the amount of $570,369.98, or 2, do not authorize final acceptance of the Southwest 320th Street Preservation Project as constructed by Miles Resources LLC in the amount of $570,000 and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the April 19th, 2022 City Council consent agenda for approval, and I'm available for any questions.
Council, are there any questions? Council President Kosmar?
Thank you, Chair Doby. So I'm just wondering, for the $71,246.88 below the contingency, the budget amount, where does that just go back into the, where does it go?
It would just go back into our overlay funding, I believe, wouldn't it, EJ?
Yeah, it stays in the unallocated within the capital fund, Council President.
Thank you,
So it'll become available for a future project.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions from anyone on the council, on the dais? Do I have a motion, Mr. Walsh?
I move to forward option 1 to the April 19, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, then we're moving that one on.
Okay.
And now we're on item C, and I see you get to do the same presentation on another great project, so go at it.
Working on it. Let's see, I'm trying to find, uh-oh, I lost something here. Let's see, I need to go back to the main. I'm gonna leave, oh, I don't wanna leave that. I'm having a little problem finding back to the main program because it didn't go back the way I thought it would. Shoot. Just give me a second. I'll go the hard way. Shoot. Okay, so I should be able to. No, it's not working in. I need some, I'm sorry, I apologize. What's that? Okay, click where? Oh, there we go, got it. Oh, that went back to the right one. Oh, sorry. Not used to these ones, okay. So this is the Southwest 356th Street Preservation Project acceptance. And the policy question is, City Council accept the Southwest 356th Street Preservation Project constructed by Lakeside Industries as complete. And this project was another preservation project on Southwest 356th Street between 15th Avenue Southwest and 4th Place Southwest on the south end on 356th Street. And again, we did the same kind of treatment and upgraded sidewalks, repairs, and upgraded ADA compliance. A few forward and after photos where we've upgraded the streets and some sidewalk improvements and ramps. And construction contract, the approved construction and contract including contingency was $1,034,098.23. Our final construction amount was $930,635.91, so we were $103,462.32 below budget. And again, that was also approved on the November 17th, 2020 council, including contingency. And financial impacts, again, this was need to have acceptance for the state and revenue and labor industries, and it was worked under Project 215. And in this, we got a grant from FHWA in the amount of $875,993.07, and the remainder was by motor vehicle excise taxes. So the option considered are authorized final acceptance of the Southwest 356th Street Preservation Project as constructed by Lakeside Industries, Inc. as the amount of $930,635.91, or do not authorize final acceptance of the Southwest 356th Street Preservation Project as constructed by Lakeside Industries, Inc. in the amount of $930,635.91 and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the April 19, 2022 City Council consent agenda for approval, and that's on that.
Okay, are there any questions from the dais, for any committee members? Yes, Council President Kolchmar?
Oh, well, thank you. I'm happy to see that we were below budget by 10%, just about, the 103,000. So again, that goes back into the, which fund does it go back into?
So this one will stay in the street preservation fund. So this is restricted funds. This is primarily REIT, I believe, right, John? Our allocation of it.
REIT and MVET, but mostly REIT, yeah.
Yeah. So it'll stay in there. It'll be used in the preservation program.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Tran, would you like to make a motion?
Chair Dovey, I move to forward option 1 to the April 19, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
Okay, is all in favor? Oh, is there a second? Excuse me.
I second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to item D, which is the final acceptance of the Steel Lake Maintenance Building Repair.
All right, good evening, Chair, committee members, members of council. I am presenting final acceptance of the Steel Lake Maintenance Facility building repairs. Policy question is, should City Council accept the Steel Lake Maintenance Building Repair Project as complete? On June 17th, 2021, a vehicle versus Steel Lake Maintenance Building accident occurred. The corner of the building was structurally damaged. We had a structural assessment done for the repair, did some temporary repairs. We finally were able to get a contract together that was approved for CFC Construction LLC in October 2021. And prior to release of the contractor's bond, the City Council is required to accept the project as complete. So the final contract expenditures were $26,189.07. And we just squeaked under the authorized contract expenditures. It was approved with contingency. It was, we used the contingency primarily because I thought that we had a reusable door and we didn't, so we had to go and get the door. All of these funds were recovered from the at-fault party already. So we're just needing to do closeout right now. So the options considered: accept the Steel Lake Maintenance Building Repair Project constructed by CFC Construction LLC in the amount of $26,187.07 as complete. Or option 2, do not accept the Steel Lake Maintenance Project building repair project as complete and provide direction to staff. And the mayor recommends option 1 be forwarded to the consent agenda. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Members or council, is there any questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So how much did the insurance pay out?
Well, this is probably the largest of the damage, but they also damaged the gate, the fence, caused quite a bit need for cleanup out there. They actually ran into a honey bucket we had set out there. So I don't know the exact number, but I believe it was over $50,000 that was recovered from the at-fault party.
Did it cover most of the repairs?
My understanding is yes, but I'd have to
All
get
right.
back to you.
That's good enough. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none?
I just think it's a
Oh,
good.
excuse me, you just turned your light on. Yes.
I just think it's a
Okay,
good
sure.
reminder, thank you, Deputy Mayor Honda, that for people to carry more than just minimum on their car insurance. Yeah. So, I mean, 50,000, that would be a lot if a person just had minimum are 25,000, and so you need to have at least 100,000 minimum. That's it for property? Oh, he's insurance, he should know. My goodness, thank you.
Okay, well, the good news is that we got reimbursed. Now the question is, Councilmember Tron, would you like to make a motion that we accept this?
Yes, Chair Dovey, I move to forward the final acceptance of the Steel Lake Maintenance Building Repair Project to the April 19, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're going to go to item E, which, when I read through this, was lots of things to understand. So I'm looking for a very, very detailed, easy to understand overview, because there's probably lots of questions.
I will try to not disappoint.
Or you won't.
Although, I got the warning alert. Okay. Okay. Good evening, Chair Dovey, committee members Tran, Walsh, Council President Kochmar, Deputy Mayor Honda, and Councilmember Norton. Keith Niven, Planning Manager. This evening, we're going to go through a number of proposed code amendments. And the reason for this is, as much as we'd like to think we write perfect code every time, we don't. We find out we don't. We find out things change. There's always room to look for efficiencies, predictability, and then every now and then we have to update our code to be consistent with state law. So for those reasons, we're going to try and bring forward annual code amendments so that our code really doesn't get out of date, because at that point then it becomes a big lift to try and catch up. Point of order, Mr. Chair, there's 12 different code amendments. Would you like for me to run through all 12 and then go to questions, or would you like for me to stop after each one and do questions individually?
I'd like to go through each one individually and then do a Q&A. And then we'll go to the next one, and we can check off the first one if we have agreement on the dais. And then we'll go to the next one. That way we can focus on each one individually and not have to try to remember.
That sounds great. Okay, the policy question this evening, let me try and move these guys. Should the city council amend titles 14, which is environmental policy, 18, which is subdivisions, 19, zoning and development, to improve clarity, improve permitting efficiencies, make the city code more consistent with recent changes in state law, modify the SEPA flexible thresholds, and add a provision for electrified fencing in portions of the commercial enterprise CE zone.
And one thing I may add as we go through these, the ones that need to be modified because of state law changes, it would be nice if you could highlight those versus other ones, okay?
Absolutely. So as you can see from the schedule, we're calling these the 2021 code amendments, and obviously we're already into the first quarter of 2022 and we're still talking about these. It takes a while internally to discuss them, to go through law, get the right language proposed. We started with the Planning Commission in November with a briefing, and then we held hearings in both December and January, and then by the time the ordinance actually got drafted, here we are in April. And I don't know what my malfunction is for not being able, there we go. Okay, it's mouse driven. I'm there now. Okay, so the 12 topical amendments. First is SEPA noticing. The second is final plat approval, which we heard about through public comment this evening. Third is plat alterations, which we also heard about through public comment this evening. The fourth is comprehensive plan docket processing and noticing. Number 5 is housekeeping items, and I'll discuss those in detail. Electrified fencing, ADU parking, height for accessory structures, ADU definition clarification, and ADU is accessory dwelling units. I'm going to try and not use acronyms. You please hold me to that. Number 10 is SEPA, which is State Environmental Policy Act. Flexible exemptions. Number 11 is unrelated persons, and number 12 is boundary line adjustments. Okay, the Planning Commission recommendation is for approval of the proposed code amendments as presented. What the heck? Sorry?
And what was the vote? Was it unanimous? Or?
It was unanimous.
Thank
yes,
you.
sir. So number 1, so here we are on number 1. Number 1 is SEPA noticing. So the current code states that SEPA notice includes property posting, posting at City Hall, notice in the mirror, notice to interested parties and agencies, notice to owners within 300 feet. And then the SEPA decision adds noticing to the public libraries. And what we're proposing here is to change the public libraries to the city webpage. And there's a couple reasons for that. First off, we believe that the city webpage gets more attention and is probably a better place to communicate decisions on SEPA. And the second is the libraries, one, we don't know how many people are actually looking at the bulletin board at the libraries, and two, it takes staff time to go deliver them to the libraries. We did not do that during COVID, obviously, because the libraries were closed. And we didn't hear any complaints from the community about not having posting at the libraries. So this is really an efficiency thing for staff, is to basically substitute the city webpage for the libraries in the noticing for SEPA decisions. The commission only raised one concern, is that the city's web pages are hard to navigate, and staff agree, and we are in the process right now of trying to reorder some of the pages, at least within the community development department, to make these public noticing board a little bit more evident and not quite so buried as it is right now. And that is my presentation on item number 1.
Okay, since we're going to go through these one by one, yes, Deputy Mayor Honda, do you have a question?
I have a request.
Please.
So it says posting at City Hall, and City Hall is closed on weekends and closed after 5 o'clock if there's not a meeting going on. It might be helpful to post on the window, on one of the windows, so that when people come by on a weekend or after 5 o'clock, they might be able to read the information.
Okay.
Good.
We can look into that. I don't know the rules about putting anything in the windows here, but I can talk to staff and see.
I think we make our own rules.
Maybe I could ask a follow-up question to what Deputy Mayor Honda just asked.
I will definitely follow up, thank you.
I'm wondering if, like, we're talking at the library has a bulletin board. Would it ever be possible to just have a bulletin board covered in glass or something outside City Hall so it doesn't make the windows look like we're postering things, but we actually had an official place to do that if that was something of the will of the council?
As long as people could access information on weekends and when the building is closed.
Okay.
I will follow up on that suggestion.
Yeah, I like that idea much better if it was something external instead of, I mean, plastering up the windows with it doesn't look very good, so.
Okay, so any other questions on this item number 1, SEPA noticing?
Well,
Councilmember?
I have a question and I'm online, so whenever you have a chance, I've raised my hand.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand on my screen. Go right ahead. Could you identify yourself? Oh, Lydia. Okay, there you are.
Yeah,
I see your hand and I see your face. Go ahead.
I'm here. Thank you. I have 2 questions. One is the electrified fencing.
Oh, we're not there yet.
Oh, isn't it?
We're
Are
doing-
we asking on that?
We're doing one at a time. We're on number 1, SEPA noticing.
Okay, so with the posting, then I would, okay, thank you for that correction.
Yeah.
With that one, I would definitely support it being available also outside of web, because we don't know if people have access to website or, to the internet. But also, I don't know how many people see it at City Hall, and I know where it's tucked away. So unless you purposely go there to look, you wouldn't even know it's there. So I wonder if we should maybe brainstorm and find other locations where it could be posted, like the PAC Community Center, where people who don't usually come to City Hall or are not engaged in city businesses and city matter could see and also better understand the workings of City Hall, because a lot of people don't. And so I would really suggest that we look into other ways and means of communicating with the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment. Okay, it sounds, based on nobody raising their hand and jumping up and down, I would say that we could move off of number 1, and it seems to be consensus that we're okay with the website instead of the public libraries, but you're hearing that there's a concern that there needs to be a place at City Hall that's accessible, it's not on a window, that we need to explore to post those things? Is that the, okay, let's move on to item number 2.
Okay, number 2, final plat approval. The current code, final plats are approved by the city council, and the proposed code amendment would change that to final plats are approved by the community development director. And down in the red on the bottom, there's purpose for the change, but I'll go through that after a couple more slides. Snohomish and Spokane counties and the cities of Auburn, Renton, Kent, Tukwila, Kirkland, and Yakima have all made similar code changes. So I want to just go through what we're talking about here, because this, for those that aren't that familiar with land use, this is a lot of planning stuff. So whenever you want to subdivide property, and so what we're talking about is single family, not multifamily. When you want to subdivide property to create lots, it's a 2-step dance. So the first step is you submit a preliminary plat application. And during that preliminary plat process, we talk about all the things that you see on the slide. We talk about traffic and open space and grading, critical areas, building setbacks, lot size, street connections, tree retention. So all the things that the community is interested in happens during this preliminary plat process. There's a hearing associated with it, and right now that hearing happens before the city's hearing examiner, and that's a decision that was made by the city council previously. And it's very technical, there's a staff report, but it gives an opportunity for all of the community concerns to be incorporated into, hopefully, that decision that's made on the preliminary plat. Once you get the preliminary plat done, what happens is what you see in the photograph, which is the developer or builder starts actually building the infrastructure for that plat. So the streets, the water, the sewer, storm lines, and they basically create those buildable lots that then can be sold to a builder or individual folks. What happens at the final plat, and that's what we're talking about here, is all we're checking is making sure that the final plat is the same as the preliminary plat, and that the infrastructure has either been built or it has been guaranteed by financial security like a bond. All right, so there's really no policy to be considered with the final plat. It is a ministerial decision of does it match the preliminary plat. And so one of the reasons why staff are suggesting we change the final plat decision is for efficiencies, to make the permitting process more efficient, but also because even if when it came time for the final plat before the city council, if there was a room full of people saying not to approve it, if it met the conditions of the preliminary plat approval, you'd have no choice but to approve it. And so this really takes an awkward land use decision away from the city council. So for those reasons, staff are suggesting we change this from council to the Director of Community Development. And that's my presentation on this one.
Okay, before I weigh in, I'll see what anybody else on the committee would like to bring up. Is there any questions? Well, seeing no, okay.
So it sounds like that the concerns that were previously in public comment are not, I mean, I understand their concern that it's taking, taking things away from the city council, but it's the city council is already basically bound to follow, if it's met the guidelines or whatever, or met the specifics, we're bound to approve it regardless then.
So if it's consistent, because what's happened is, depending on the size of the plat, you may have a developer or builder who's already put millions of dollars into the ground to make it consistent with what was approved at the preliminary plat level. So that's where that predictability of process needs to be kind of absolute.
Okay.
Yes, Council
I
President.
would not want to relinquish my final approval. I think we're here to speak for the citizens, and if there was something wrong in the beginning, we should know that before it even gets to final plat approval, but I wouldn't want to relinquish my authority.
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, it seems like then the question would be is whether the preliminary plat approval should be done the way it's done, or whether that should be coming before the city council at some point. It seems like that by the time you get to final plat approval, that's after the fact. So if there was some change, it seems like that the final plat approval, like you say, is more a ministerial type thing, where the preliminary plat is where the actual policy decisions are made. So I understand that that's very complex, and that with those complexities, I mean, I don't think that those of us up here should be determining those complexities, but still the basic direction that it's going, it seems like that there'd be a concern with us up here, if that makes sense. And And I don't know if that's, I'll direct that as a question to you. Does that make sense to you?
I think I hear what you're saying, council member. I think the criteria for approving a preliminary plat, there's both technical as well as policy that's in code. And so that criteria, which then includes, a hearing process, that is right now conducted by the city's hearing examiner. I don't think you asked me if my opinion was whether that was a good process or not, but that is what's happening now. I think that when it gets to final plat, there really is no discretion that should be weighed, whether it's the council or the hearing examiner or the community development director. There's really no place for discretion at that final plat decision point. It happens with the preliminary plat, if that's clear.
Yeah, I think that's clear. So, I mean, like you say, with the preliminary plat, there's the technical issues and then there's the policy issues. And is there some way that back on that level, we can have those policy issues come before the city council when could actually be something that could be done?
So those policy criteria are in the city code now. They are administered through a recommendation in the staff report by staff to the hearing examiner, who then basically makes a judgment on its consistency. That could be a decision that council could take back if they wanted to. That would be a different code amendment to remove that authority from the hearing examiner back to the city council. I think there's a lot of reasons why I think staff would probably say that's probably not the direction you should go, but that's a decision that council could make if that is a decision that they would want to make.
Council Dawson, did you have your hand raised? Your turn?
Yes, I do. Thank you for seeing it.
Yeah, I'm learning.
I appreciate it. Thank you for calling on me. I completely feel differently than Council President Kochmar about this, because I feel like if we've done the policy, once it's passed, I believe our role is to let staff and or whoever is responsible to do it, because then we get involved in the day-to-day technical aspect of what's being done rather than focusing on policy. So I personally would not go away from, I would support this where staff and whoever is involved makes the decision and council does not get involved. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody down? Yes, Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So when a preliminary plat is being determined, at what point is council informed of that? Or are we not informed until the final plat comes before us?
You would, I cannot think of anything in the code that would indicate that council would be made aware of a preliminary plat application. So you wouldn't know about a subdivision other than through public comment at one of your council meetings, or seeing a notice board up in the neighborhood next to a vacant piece of property, or seeing it in the mirror under legal notices. Those are the ways that you would become aware of it prior to currently it coming to you as a final plat when it's all said and done.
Are there any cities where the preliminary plat comes before a city council?
There are some, but it's by far the minority. And sorry, just to clarify, you were talking about preliminary plat or final plat? Preliminary plat. Yeah, for preliminary plat, the vast majority of cities in Washington vest that either in the hearing examiner or in some cases even in staff for preliminary plat decision. There are numerous policy reasons and legal reasons, risk-wise, for why that is, but in general, it's usually done by a hearing examiner. That's the most common of systems for preliminary plat.
I can understand why it's done that way. None of us have the knowledge that staff has or the hearing examiner would have, but perhaps in the future, it would be nice to inform the council that this is actually occurring, that there's a preliminary plat being worked on and where it's at. And just let council have that knowledge, and if they would like more information, then they could get more information about it.
I think that's a great suggestion. I will share that with Brian tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
So I have a couple Councilmember Trump, sorry, I missed your light. Your turn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Keith, for your presentation. I'm really torn with this because part of me, I don't want to relieve myself of my elected position to make a decision. But at the same time, I don't think I equipped with the knowledge and the expertise to make this type of technical decision. And I would hate to make the wrong decision and put the city at risk. So I don't know. I mean, I'm really torn about this.
Keith, do you mind if I just say a couple of things generally on the process? So I think that there are a number of different components to the plat process generally. And it starts with a legislative component, a completely legislative component of deciding what the city's development code says. That's a legislative function that you guys have the power to do. You can write the development code and the regulations in it to say what you want it to say within certain bounds under state law. So there's a legislative component there. Once you get to the plat process generally, the first step is preliminary plat, which Keith has mentioned. The preliminary plat process is a quasi-judicial process. So it's not a legislative function. Even if the decision were yours to make, you would still be acting in a quasi-judicial function there. And so that requires application of technical expertise and also requires application of interpreting what the codes say and the law. So it's a judicial function as well that's done at preliminary plat. Once you get to final plat, as Keith characterized it, it's a ministerial decision. At that point, there isn't any legal expertise being applied, and there also isn't any legislative expertise being applied. It's essentially to some degree, a box-checking exercise. Is the street where it's supposed to be? Is the light where it's supposed to be? Are there sewer connections to each one of the lots? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, and it corresponds with the plans, then you're required legally to approve it. So those are kind of the three different phases, I would say, to these types of applications.
So a couple questions that I have, I guess it's my turn. How many times in the last 5 years has a plat come from preliminary to the city council and it's been not stamped? Did it ever happen? I don't remember it ever happening before.
Not stamped as in not approved?
Yeah, I'm saying.
I'm not aware of any.
Not aware
the
of
entire
any.
time I've been here.
Okay.
I think everyone's been approved.
So how many times, if you take that, going to this other step where it comes before the council for final approval, has it delayed somebody from bringing their preliminary plat to final so they can start to sell things and develop it? Has there already been a delay process?
Yes.
How
Often.
often?
Most. I mean, on an administrative end, basically when they've met, to the attorney's point, when they've met all of the check boxes, then it comes in. And then it has to effectively get scheduled through LUTC and council. So, I mean, you're looking at a 60 to 75-day process right there, as opposed to it being put on the community development director's desk, Brian, and him confirming it's done and approved. So right out of the gate, it's a 2-month delay.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to speak for Brian, but I think he would say that every single time there is a final plat approval, it's delayed every single time because it has to go through the council process.
And the delay is because our process that says it has to come, the developer has crossed all the boxes, checked them all off, put the street lights wherever, everything's been done, and now you have to schedule it to go to LUTC, which is 2 weeks, and then you have to schedule it to get voted on, and then it has to go to council, so it's a minimum of a month every time from final sign-off, and it could be as much as 2 months?
I think on average, it's 60 to 75 days.
So, is there any way that you could condense that schedule so that we could speed it up without the council saying, no, we're not going to put our final stamp on it? Because the thing that I see, it's really protecting our staff versus how, you know, if the CD director stamps it or the council does, because if there's something comes up and we haven't made the final vote, I mean, if we vote wrong, we're the ones that hold the bag and are in trouble. It's not the staff. If we move it up to the staff and it never gets to council, then the battle's always going to be at a staff level when the customer, i.e. the developer, says, hey, I got a problem. And that, so what I see this is really a timing thing and not
Yeah, and
a decision-making thing.
agreed. And I don't want to speak for Brian too much, so I'll these are my thoughts, not Brian's.
Yeah,
But,
man, you're sitting in that seat, so
yeah,
I'm
so
asking the question.
So on his behalf, you know, the thing I would expand on a little bit, and Keith touched on this, is the process is administrative. If they've checked all the boxes, there's no choice other than to approve it under
And I
state
get that,
law.
I understand that.
So I think, you know, there's two things here. One, the report that's coming from staff is what council's going to base a vote on. So you have the same information that Brian would have to approve or not approve it. So I think, you know, I can't think of any time where the decision would be different based on the same facts being presented. The piece that I think that Keith touched on that is important to remember is there's a goal of not putting council into an awkward position where there is a preliminary plat that's been approved by a hearing examiner based on the larger land use policy of the city. And then they have checked all the boxes. They come to this meeting, and then ultimately the full council meeting, and there's a room full of people sitting there saying, "Don't approve this. We don't want whatever the plat." You know, plat's typically housing, but you know, we don't want the housing there. Where the hearing examiner's already said it's permissible. So it puts council in an awkward position where they are hearing feedback, but they have no option other than to approve it. So I think that is a lot of what this is. The timing, yes, is important, but the other piece of this is not putting the council into a position that's not necessarily one that anyone wants to be put in.
And I, as a council member, would rather be put in that awkward position so that it's the council member giving the answer instead of putting the staff in the position of, why did you do this?
Can I comment?
Yeah, oh yeah, there you are. I wasn't looking, your hand, go ahead.
So actually the question is for Chair Doby.
Yes.
So can you tell me where the concern is from your perspective? Because right now, as I'm listening to the conversation, I know one of the complaints we have from the public is that our planning process is slow. So we're now willing to make it even slower when our input is really to say that they follow what, you know, where the box is checked and the staff follow what it says is all you have authority over. We can't overturn anything, and we don't have authority over anything else once the policy, either be it from state or from council, go to staff, right? So I don't see the purpose, but being informed is good and asking questions is good, but I think waiting for us to approve or not approve, I don't think is not within our purview. But my concern now, another added layer is there's already a complaint about timing and how slow we are, and now we're increasing that time to make it even slower when that's not even our role as council. So maybe you can help me understand your concern better.
Okay,
Thank you.
Let me just answer that so you understand where I'm coming from on this. There was a development many years ago in Federal Way that I sat up here for many, many months going through where a fellow's house got wet and flooded. And we went through that whole process, and that took probably 2 years that I can remember of this individual coming back to this dais and bringing it up over and over and over and over again. And he was justified. That was his right to do that. So ultimately, the council is the one that's going to answer the questions, even though the plat's already been done. I am all for speeding up that process so it doesn't have to go through LUTC and come to the council, so we can speed it here to get it quicker, so we can get our developers to build the product faster. But the customer, whoever that is, it's not going to be happy, or the citizens, or the 260 people that signed the petition, or the 3 people that are not happy that the tree got cut down, or whatever it is. They're still going to come here. And then we're going to be in a position that we said, oh, the community developer signed off on it, I'm just the elected official, don't come see me. We have to be the final place where it says, yeah, we voted for it, sorry, that's the decision, and we went through the whole process. So that's why I think we should still check off, take responsibility, but we need to speed it up so it doesn't have to go through multiple steps of going to planning commission, well, maybe it goes to planning commission, but LUTC, and cut those 6 weeks out so we can build faster. But let's not put the onus of the decision on the staff, because we're still going to get the questions. That's why I don't personally want to automatically say, okay, CD, sign off.
Chair,
Yes,
I would even recommend it not go to LUTC. I would recommend after it's ready to go to the council, it just goes to a general council meeting.
and I'm okay with that.
'Cause that cuts
Let's
off.
take as many steps
Yeah.
out as we can, but let's not give up our decision-making process or our stamp on it, because we're the ultimate decision makers.
And I believe if council knows that there's a preliminary plat being worked on in the beginning, then we could follow it if we're interested, or if people are coming to us with concerns as they have in the past, then we would know it's even happening.
And correct me if I'm wrong, just to follow up on that. When somebody's coming to redevelop their property anyway and going from 10,000 square feet to 2,200, or they want to change from houses to condos, it's still going to come to land use. We're still going to be at the very beginning of it. It's not going to be in a vacuum. This is just the final approval of the plat, correct?
I think, tell me if I'm not answering the question, but I think I could answer that by saying that there are a lot of land use approvals that the city issues. Most of them are done by staff. Some of them are done by the hearing examiner, and then even fewer are done by the council. So there are a number of decisions on building permits, substantial decisions that are made by staff. Some few things are done by council, but it's the decision maker isn't the same across the board. I'm not sure if that answers entirely your question, but.
It's all going to come back to the council one way or the other eventually, right? We're ultimately responsible.
Politically, for sure, yeah.
We're ultimately responsible, and we shouldn't give up that decision-making process, but we should speed it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair
Go ahead.
Dobie.
Yeah.
My reason for saying that I don't want to give up my final authority is because if the people have a concern, they don't understand what happened, they need to come here and tell us what their concerns were so that we can explain to them and they can be part of this whole process. They may not be happy, but at least they know that they were heard. And if you're getting to the end of a development, you're going to know when that development is going to be finally accepted. It doesn't happen like magic, so I would assume that you would know pretty much ahead of time when that was going to happen to give notice.
We'd like them heard before the preliminary plat is even done.
Yes, Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, personally, I think that this with the final plat approval, I mean, I'm fine with personally, I'm fine with staff doing that, rather than the council. But with the it's been mentioned back with the preliminary plat, I mean, there's technical things with the preliminary plat, and there's policy issues with the preliminary plat. Is there some way that, you know, I'm just kind of brainstorming here, but is there some way where if there is any type of red flag with a policy issue, that could come before the city council at that point, rather than just going on without the council even knowing about it?
A couple things. So it's not, the city can choose to have the city council be the decision maker for preliminary plats. That's an option legally, just as the option we currently have, which is the hearing examiner approves preliminary plats. Both of those are options. So yes, you could do that. I would suggest, though, that there aren't many policy decisions that are made at preliminary plat. They're mostly application of our code to the facts. In other words, they're, as I referenced before, quasi-judicial decisions rather than policy decisions, or at least rather than straight policy decisions at a minimum. Again, I would suggest that if the council wants to change our development regulations such that a different decision might or might not be made at preliminary plat, that might be the best way to do it. But again, you absolutely can legally have the council be the decision maker at preliminary plat.
Yeah, well,
Could I make a suggestion to the committee? Since we got 10 more to go through, we've agreed on one. Number two, there seems to be a very different of opinions on what to do. Let's put two aside and go to the next one and see if we can move this amendment to get along, and we can always revisit number two when we get a little more time. Would that be reasonable?
that seems very reasonable.
You okay? Okay. So
That's why you're the chair.
So far, we all agree on number one. Number two, we're going to move to the side and not going to make a decision right now, and let's go to number three.
And I think number three is going to be a little bit tied to Councilmember Walsh's ideas on number two, but let's go ahead and see where we get. So a plat alteration. So the current code, plat alterations are approved by City Council, and the proposal is to take this plat alteration to the hearing examiner. And let me tell you why. So what happens, what this is after, so remember from our last conversation, first you go through a preliminary plat approval, and then you build out your plat infrastructure, and then you get your final plat approved. And then in theory, you go ahead and you sell all the lots to a builder, and a builder builds houses on it, and you walk away and move on to your next property. Sometimes, and this is like in a blue moon, after the final plat is approved, the developer wants to change it. All right? So the suggestion to go back to the hearing examiner is you're actually changing the preliminary plat. Because ultimately, if you remember, final plat just needs to be consistent with preliminary plat. And so if you're ultimately going to change that final plat, you're actually going 2 steps back to change the preliminary plat, and that conversation should go to the same group or person that approved the preliminary plat in the first place, which is why I suggested this might be tethered to Councilmember Walsh's ideas on number 2. But our suggestion is this should go to the hearing examiner. And like I said, plat alterations are super rare. Most developers don't want to unwind something that they've got approved. But like, for example, let's assume that when they built their plat infrastructure, there was an easement or something on lots, and at the end of the day, they didn't need it. They could then sell those lots for more money by getting rid of that easement. You would have to then go back and potentially alter the plat to get rid of that easement, depending on what kind of an easement it was. So sometimes it might be changing lot lines around. Sometimes it might be doing certain things. It really does not happen that often. So anyway, and as a little note on the bottom, cities of Kent, Auburn, Kirkland send their plat alterations to the hearing examiner. Bellevue and Snoqualmie allow the director to make the decision. So just for pure sake.
Yeah.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah. I think there is a question about who should be doing the preliminary plat. However, I would say that whoever did the preliminary plat should also be the one doing the plat alterations. It doesn't make sense that a different person or body need to approve plat alterations than what did the preliminary plat to begin with.
Counterpoint to that? Oh, did I see? here's my counterpoint to that, Councilmember Walsh. If I want to adjust a lot line or an easement after I've already got it approved, that usually has to do with some monetary transaction. I can make more because I changed the easement, because I found out that I could do that. As if it's been approved through the whole system, the council signed off on it, and that's what we approve, and now somebody decides to change it, and it goes to another, the authority that did it originally, then all of a sudden, we've given up our decision and say, wait a minute, it was approved the way it is, we're not there. That's just the
Is the
Turning
plat,
it off now.
is this a plat alteration? The plat alteration, though, is after the preliminary plat approval, but prior to final plat approval, no? It's after
No,
final plat.
it's after the final plat is
after
approved.
final
It can be
plat.
either.
It could be
Oh,
either.
either,
It can be either.
okay.
Okay, any other questions from the dais? Yes?
So, once again, it seems as though whoever made that final decision, whether it was the preliminary plat or the final plat, whoever did that final decision should be the one making the decision on a plat alteration.
Mr. Tron,
agree.
do you have-
I think I agree with Committee Member Walsh. It should go back to the original one. Because, I mean, elected officials, sometimes we made the decision based on, pressure from the public. I mean, that's the way it is. And because of that, sometimes we make the wrong decision in terms of the technical field. So I would rather this item to go back to the hearing examiner.
So it sounds like we have item 3 over to the yes side with item number 1. Okay, is that what I'm hearing? Okay, let's move to number 4.
All right, we're screaming along. So number 4 is the comp plan selection docket, and you guys just did this one a couple of meetings ago, I believe. So the current code, the first public discussion or opportunity for a proposed comprehensive plan amendment is at this committee. That's the way the code reads now. What we're proposing, and this goes against most of the other proposals that we're making, which is to make the process more efficient, we're actually proposing to add another step to this process, where the first opportunity for the public to discuss a proposed comprehensive plan amendment would be at the Planning Commission. So what we're suggesting is creating a step before LUTC so the Planning Commission can hear whether there's public concerns about a proposed comprehensive plan amendment, and then that would come to LUTC for selection. And again, this is about selection, not about approving a comprehensive plan amendment. This is just whether it goes on a docket to be reviewed in its entirety later in the year. So we just feel like those times where the public have come to this meeting to try and tell you how concerned they are about changing the zone or the comprehensive plan designation is just a hard venue to have a conversation like that, and giving an opportunity at the Planning Commission seems like it makes more sense.
Okay, who wants to go first? Deputy Mayor Honda, I'll let you go first.
Thank you. I think that's a good idea. The more options that the public has to discuss these type of decisions, the better. And the Planning Commission is much more relaxed than a council meeting in which they only have a very short time to get their message through. So, because they can always come to the council meeting too.
Yes.
So they have more than one option of
Yes.
time to speak to us. I think this is good.
Anybody else? Councilmember Walsh, do you have a question?
I agree with that.
Okay, I'll take the counterpart. I honestly disagree. I think that's taking away your right as an elected official to make the decision to give it to a planning commission to review who is appointed by the council. We're elected to make those decisions. The planning commission is not elected to make city comprehensive planning decisions. That's what we're supposed to do. So I think we're reversing it. We've never, well, I know of times we have not as a council. When I was on it send it to the planning commission to do the work. But if it goes to the planning commission and they
It
come.
comes to us.
Yeah.
No, this
afterwards.
proposal says it goes to planning commission first, or it could, and then it comes to us.
Right.
That's backwards, the way
Just-
it should work, in my
Just to
opinion.
clarify, there's a hearing at the planning commission, but then the planning commission issues a recommendation to you, at which point the actual decision is then made by council.
Right, but our decision should be, does that go forward, go to the planning commission to research it, instead of the planning commission coming to us and saying, we think you should do this. I just think it's reversed the decision-making process totally, and I would oppose this amendment personally.
So and again, just to be clear, because I'm not always clear, this is, okay.
Go ahead, I'm
I
sorry.
was just going to say, it's kind of like more like a ping pong match, right? So planning commission, LUTC, full council, then planning commission, then LUTC, and then full council. So the selection piece of this used to start here, and all we're saying is let's put another step in before this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just have a philosophy against that, but that's just me, and there's more than one vote here, so.
To me, it seems as though it's not taking anything from the council at all. It's not taking anything from the council, but it's just giving both the public an opportunity to comment previous to coming before the LUTC, and also it's an additional, it'll already be thought out some by the planning commission before it comes here, so we'll be able to be better informed when it does come here.
Councilmember Tron?
Thank you,
And then
Mr. Chair.
Council President
With all
Coachman.
due respect, Chair, I have to disagree.
No,
with you.
that's why we're having a discourse.
I think
you
I
can
agree
disagree.
with Committee Member Walsh, because I think this step is actually, to me, is more us reaching out to the community to get more input from the community. We're not giving up anything, because eventually whatever that is will have to come back to this committee and then move on to the council. So we not actually give up anything.
No, I agree, we're not giving up the final decision. You're just setting up people for disappointment when you tell them you're wrong and heck no. Council President
I was just going to
Kochmar.
say, Jack, I think you're overvoted here. I think we're good with 4.
So we're moving on, I'm hearing number 4, the council wants to make that, move that forward, is that what I hear from my colleagues?
I guess my only,
Okay.
I guess my only question is if it went on to the consent agenda, would we not have consent?
Well, I'll probably vote against it, but that's okay. I'm only one person. Okay, let's go on to number 5.
All right, number 5. Number 5, we're just calling housekeeping items. There's actually 11 minor modifications embedded in number 5. It's really just to clean up, excuse me, code inconsistencies and outdated items. Excuse me. For example, 19-260-0553 talks about roosters, and what it says is that roosters kept prior to code adoption shall be removed by June 30 of 2011. So first off, that was 11 years ago, and second,
I was in those meetings.
and second, a rooster in captivity only lives 5 to 8 years. So if we've got rooster problems, it's currently not meeting code anyway, so suggestion is let's get rid of that.
We had a rooster that was a problem, and
Yeah,
it
it
got
was-
sent to a farm.
That took like 3 meetings talking about
Right,
roosters.
and then it met its demise at the farm. But I saw on Facebook where roosters tend to wander,
Yeah.
and so there was a wandering rooster apparently. And
Say the easy solution would have been chicken and dumplings.
All right, and then chicken and ducks. So right now, 19-260-060 subsection 3 gives Brian Davis the decision ability on the design of chicken coops. And although Brian may know a lot about the design of chicken coops, I'm just not sure that he wants to be known as being an expert in design of chicken coops. So again, it still have to have a coop, but it just is striking out the language that says it has to be approved. The design has to be approved by the community development director. And then a third example here is we used to have a zone called corporate park. We actually have no land in the city zoned corporate park any longer. And so this is just taking out a reference to corporate park. So this gives you a flavor of those 11 changes. They're all non-substantive and just code cleanup, if nothing else.
Deputy Mayor Honda, you had a question?
No, but how many chickens is one allowed in Federal Way? It's 3, isn't it?
It's 4.
4?
Thought.
Just because I was asked recently, and I don't know.
I have another follow-up item. I will get back with you
Okay,
tomorrow
thank you.
on that. I just need to read the code.
Can I make one comment about chicken coops, though? Because this was none of you were on the council then at that time, or were you there, Linda? Anyway, I was on the council and we were talking about chickens and chicken coops and roosters. And I specifically remember that we came up with 3 plans of what kind of chicken coops somebody could put in their yard, because we didn't want the neighbor calling and complaining that they had the wrong chicken coop. So we had all these community development calls of bad chicken coops. So I don't know if that's still in the code, but that was a big debate, so it was standardized, so Brian could say, you don't have chicken coop with 3 rooms, you have to have one with 2, or whatever it was.
Well, you missed the goat issue. The goat. The goat. That started the year after you left, yeah.
And if, just as long as Brian knows that a coupe must have 2 doors, because if it has 4 doors, it'll be a sedan.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay, so number 5.
Okay.
I see consensus on moving forward.
It's 4 chickens
4
or ducks,
chickens.
by the way.
4 chickens, yeah.
Thank you. That saves me something to do tomorrow. I appreciate it.
Okay, and
All right.
Lydia, you're going to need to ask your question on this one.
So let me give you a brief intro here. So electrified fencing. So right now, electrified fencing is only permitted in the city to contain large domestic animals, sticking with the animal theme. And the proposal is to allow for certain uses in the CE zone, which is commercial enterprise. That's kind of the south central part of our city, and all government facilities. All right. And this proposal, I think, was initiated by council leadership and the mayor's office, and at this point was supported by the planning commission.
I'm glad to see it finally here. It's been a while.
Yes, Deputy Mayor Honda and I did go to a business that is requesting it and in an industrial area, and absolutely they need it because of all the crime that's happening, all the theft.
So my question is the CE zone and government facilities the only places that this is required or would be needed, or should it be expanded?
So there was a bit of a conversation at the Planning Commission about expanding it to other zones. There was concern of the aesthetic of what the electrified, because the electrified fence goes inside another fence. So you have a fence within a fence, and you start to create this aesthetic of that maybe is not something we want in the city. So the council can extend this provision to any zone that they would feel appropriate. Excuse me. But the more you get, so right now, as Deputy Mayor said, the CE zone is kind of more the industrial part of the city, and maybe that was Council President Kochmar, sorry, Council President. But it's really kind of, we're talking about mostly for areas of outdoor storage. So like, I'm going to use the word yards. So like whether it's, storing materials outside, those are the places that I think we're trying to be responsive to with this code amendment. Once you get to, say, BC or BN or some of our other more retail-oriented zones, this becomes, I think, there's a different conversation that needs to happen.
Yeah, with this, I'd say that the CE makes sense, and then later on, if there are requests for other zones, we can take it up at that time. But right now, go with the way it's been proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question. So if we allow this type of fencing in the city, and if somebody got hurt or get killed, from the liability perspective, how is it applied to the city?
Keith, maybe before I address the legal point, you could address the factual point about what the electric fences are in terms of voltage and stuff like that?
I'll go part of the way down that ladder. So the electrified fencing, as I mentioned earlier, it needs to be placed inside another fence, and far enough back that somebody can't accidentally touch it. It also has to have like yellow placards that say electrified fencing, warning, that kind of thing. In terms of whether it could kill you, harm you, or do bodily injury, I don't know enough technical details to know whether the answer is yes or no. When this question came up, because it did come up at the Planning Commission council member, the representative who's proposing to install this fencing for the Federal Way business indicated that they get sued. Now, lawsuits typically go everywhere, so my guess is the city could if it allows it, but typically the primary liability risk is with the fence manufacturer or the property owner. We're probably coming in maybe third or fourth on that totem pole, but I'm going to stop on that.
Yeah, just to add a little bit more to that, the regulations as proposed would not allow the electric fence to exceed 12 volts. So we're talking about pretty low amounts of electricity, as I understand it, and I'm not an expert in electric fences, but as I understood it, the idea here is that it triggers an alarm system rather than it actually being, a something that zaps you like the Jurassic Park style electric fence. So, however, to circle back to your original question, no question there may be some city liability associated with this. I think that the way it's drafted is meant to limit that as much as possible while allowing it for security uses.
I may be able to provide a little bit of perspective on electric fences. Having grown up a farm boy, I've had a bit of experience with electric fences, and some of them are rather memorable. However, I'm here today with only limited brain damage, and so no, But anyway, yeah, I've in farm country, I mean, there's lots of electric fences, and an encounter with an electric fence is unpleasant. However, it is not harmful in any way, however unpleasant it may be.
But that depends on how far up the voltage is. I mean, I grew up around a lot of cow fences too, and I used to play and do this, and I thought it was, now you know what's wrong with us.
Yeah.
No, I thought they were funny. We used to play jokes and see who could hold it the longest, and I mean, it doesn't really hurt that bad. If you're a little kid and
it gets your attention, but with 12 volts, I mean, it isn't going to cause any.
I mean, you could put your tongue on it. I've done it. Sorry, I have.
Okay.
It's not that bad.
I avoided that.
So I got the impression from this dais that, I don't see Lydia bring anything up, that we're okay with moving this forward. Is that?
I have a question.
Oh, okay, I thought you were.
So, I have a question because I've asked my husband to install an electric fence around our house and around our boat, and to electrify the metal parts on our boat, because I'm paranoid and I live here. So if a individual took it upon themselves to just do this on their own and not ask the city for permission, what kind of legal ramifications would that person be taking on?
Sure. So under the current code, you can only build an electrical fence in conjunction with a cattle use, or as proposed, it would be in these certain zones. So if somebody constructed an electric fence in a residential area, for instance, that would not be allowed. It'd be illegal under city code and subject to code enforcement.
What's the code enforcement? Do you know offhand?
Just generally, the code enforcement would, likely a neighbor would complain, or somebody would notify code enforcement, they'd otherwise find out, and then code enforcement would investigate, determine that there was a violation, they'd issue a notice of violation, which would give a certain amount of time to fix the issue or appeal the determination that there's a violation. And then you have a certain amount of time as a property owner to remedy that, and if you don't, then it can be abated essentially by the city.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So the company that came to us and asked for this around their property did say that you're not going to want to touch it again, but it will go to their alarm company, and they'll know immediately that someone's trying to get into the yard.
Yeah.
So you're not going to, it's not going to cause permanent damage, but you're not going to want to do it.
And I think he told us that he had $60,000 worth of stolen goods one evening
Yeah.
from his yard. Is that, do I have that right?
I think it was much more than that.
More than
but
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing from my colleagues that we're going to move this one forward, so let's go to number 7.
Okay, let me start with this one. So this one, the committee asked to be made aware of when we're making code changes in response to state statute. This would be one. So the current code requires 1 parking space for every accessory dwelling unit. And what came out of Olympia was that we cannot require a parking stall for an accessory dwelling unit when it is within 1/4 mile of a major transit stop. So we also had to add the definition of major transit stop. So you might say, what does that look like? So the commission did. They said, what does that look like? And they also asked us to add limitations. So let's go there. So this is a map. The blue circles are considered a major transit stop. And then the light blue haze around each of the blue circles is that 1/4 mile. So you can see what's included as major transit stops and the 1/4 mile distance to those. So basically, if you lived in one of those neighborhoods that are overlain by this graphic, and you wanted to build an accessory dwelling unit, you would not need a parking space according to state statute. And that's what our code is trying to kind of correct with. Now, the one thing that we can do, and you can see on the bottom, note number 13. So note number 13 says the director may require the provision of 1 off-street parking space for an accessory dwelling unit located within 1/4 mile of a major transit stop if the director has determined the accessory dwelling unit is located in an area without access to available street parking capacity within 800 feet of the property. So this does give the city the ability still to say that because of our local conditions and the local condition of the particular ADU request, we can still require 1 parking space. So that's the proposed code change.
I have a question.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So if the parking space was to be on the street for the ADU, how long could that vehicle be parked on this street? Because currently, we have a limit as to how long a vehicle can be parked on the street. So if, let's say the person doesn't really drive very often, but has a vehicle there, would they have to move it every so many, how many, it's 72 hours?
Yes.
Would they still have to do that?
Yes. Or else face getting a ticket or towed,
tow.
I assume. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask one question about that then?
Yes, you may. Your hand's not risen, but I hear you, so go right ahead.
No, I took it down from the last one because Councilmember Tran asked my question.
Okay.
And so thank you. In this instance, though, to follow up to Deputy Mayor Honda's comment, In Seattle, they do have a sticker that they put on their car if they live there, where they don't have to check or move their car every 2 hours or whatever. So if this is a decision or how we want to move forward, I think that could be a way of addressing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Acevedos is correct that they do have that same procedure. When they built the Sound Transit Garage in the Tukwila area, there was no parking. There wasn't a parking garage. They built the stop, but no parking garage, and so people were parking in the neighborhoods. And so then the people who lived in the neighborhoods, who had the cars, were getting ticketed, and so instead they put a pass on their cars.
A comment I would make is, when I look at these little circles, this is basically 320th and 99, where it's saying that there's traffic stops. I think if we move into the neighborhoods and let people park on the streets for an ADU and don't require a parking space, we're gonna have a lot more people up here at the dais talking to us. So I would think, I have no problem with 320th and 99 and the parking, but I would have a hard time saying we're gonna allocate all the neighborhoods and let ADUs park on the street without requiring a parking space, because that's gonna open up a lot of comments here at the council.
Yeah, and for sure, that's definitely not something that's proposed as part of this. We're only moving as far as we have to under state law.
Okay. So, looking at the dais, everybody's okay with this to move forward? Okay, we're on to the next.
All right, number 8. So this is just a clarification item. This is on height for accessory structures. So that could be a accessory dwelling unit, that could be a standalone garage in your yard. So current code says floor area and footprint must be less. Our suggestion is to change it to must be not taller than and less square footage. So we think that's a lot clearer than the way that code reads right now, and there's been some issues in interpreting that. So we think this is actually puts the city in a better place.
Could you give an example of what you're talking about so we can visually understand, or from your description?
Sure. So let's say that you have a single-story house with pitched roof, and the top of roof would be maybe 12, 15, 20, 22 feet or something, okay? And you want to build a standalone ADU in your backyard as an accessory structure, because it's accessory to the house. It cannot be taller than your house. And so part of this is, because there wasn't language about building height in the code, this gets clarity that to be accessory, it can't be taller. You wouldn't want an accessory structure taller than the main structure on the property, whether it's residential or commercial, because commercial could be a shed or an outbuilding that holds tools and things. And so this is just trying to keep it in proportion and smaller looking in appearance than the main structure on the property.
Okay, I see no lights, so let's move on to the next one.
Okay, accessory dwelling unit definition. The current code says basically an accessory dwelling unit provides complete independent living facilities. And independent is not defined. We are suggesting basically to amend our code to make it clearer. Now, let me take a step backwards. Accessory dwelling units can either be attached or detached from the main house. When it's detached, it's either standalone, like in the backyard, or some people build them as a second story on their top of their garage, if their garage is a freestanding garage. But it's really easy to pick out an accessory dwelling unit when it's detached from the existing house. The problem and the ambiguity comes in when it's an addition to an existing house, and whether that addition is independent and complete. It does say that it needs to have a bathroom, it needs to have a kitchen, but our code doesn't say a single-family house can't have 2 kitchens. And so it created this gray area. And the commission asked for some examples. And so let me go through my happy examples here, and hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. So on the first example, here's the existing house. It's the hatched area, and you can see it's got a solid backyard wall. And somebody wants to build an addition, and this addition has no access points to the house. So the only way in and out of this addition is through this exterior door, and it's got a bathroom, a kitchen, and a bedroom. We would call this an ADU, okay? Let's move down to number 2. Number 2, same expansion, but they blow a hole in the wall. So now this space and the existing house just flow together. It's all one residence, it's just bigger now. We would say this is not an ADU. And then you go down to the third one, and the third one has a door to the outside, but it also has a lockable door to the inside. So this is the one that we're trying to really get clarity on, and we think that this one is an ADU. Okay? So if you guys agree with those 3 examples, the proposed code clearly gets us to that as something that can be predictable both for people wanting to build ADUs as well as for neighbors of people building ADUs. And that's really what we're trying to do, is make the code clearer and more predictable for our community.
So the one question I have is, the one in the middle, if someone came to the planning department or the permit department and wanted to build that, and they just said, we just want an addition to our house, they would be able to do that. It just would not be called an ADU.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And the only difference here is if it's an ADU, there's a separate permit to get. And that's the process piece.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman.
Why would someone want to do an ADU instead of an addition?
If you can then rent it out or lease it out to someone, a tenant, there's income for your property. Whereas if that's all family members, because it's all free-flowing, you could still rent out a bedroom. It's just not separate, and the market is a little different depending on whether it's separate or not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on this? Okay, let's move to the next. Number 10, are we on now?
We are on 10. All right, so SEPA, so the State Environmental Policy Act, so this is our review, our environmental review, gives cities the ability to adopt what they call flexible thresholds. And those have been going up over time as more and more cities have adopted code that addresses a lot of the environmental impacts that used to only be addressed by SEPA. SEPA is becoming kind of less of an important tool in Washington State. And so right now, what you can see is our current code exempts 20 single-family homes, 0 multifamily units, 12,000 square feet, 40 parking spaces, and 500 cubic yards of dirt from getting SEPA review. Our proposal is to expand the single-family to 30, multifamily 60, commercial 30,000, parking 90, and the dirt movement to 1,000 yards. And the reason for that is most of the SEPA decisions that we issue are what's called a determination of non-significance. In other words, we go through the review and there's no conditions that staff put on it because our codes handle all the impacts. And so what this is recognizing is really we just have a process piece that can be streamlined by allowing a little bit larger projects to go through this without having to do a SEPA review. It does not change. If there's a critical area, you have to do SEPA, period. It doesn't matter how many units you've got going on. There has to be SEPA if there is critical areas involved. But if the property is, say, along Pack Highway and you want to build 50 apartments, what environmental review do you need to do for that? Frankly, everything that we have, stormwater, traffic, all of those things are covered by city code. And so what this is doing is really trying to streamline that permitting process because our comprehensive plan says we should be trying to do stuff like that. So this is, and so the one question that the commission asked is, how would we deal with noticing, because sometimes SEPA is the tool that drives public notice. And so our suggestion is if, and that's that last column in this chart here, is if you were going to do any multifamily above 20 units, it would trigger a public notice so that the community would have an opportunity to weigh in on an application. And if you were going to do any commercial beyond the 12,000 square feet, which right now is exempt, so even if it was, 25,000 square feet of commercial, you'd have to do public notice. So what we're trying to do is keep that transparency piece open. And so we've drafted some code that has some public noticing requirements, even though we're suggesting to increase the SEPA thresholds. So.
I have one comment. I have no problem with the chart except where it says multifamily. Right now, its current code is 0, and we just went to 60, which is a huge increase. And, we're hearing a lot of people about multifamily, and let's not just become like we were back in the 90s when we became a city. So it's like we're not listening. I mean, the code's telling people we're not listening if we're going to exempt anything up to 60. So can you do that same chart and just keep multifamily the way it is?
Sure, we could do that. Just for the council to hear this piece, not that it's going to change anything, is there is legislation that just went through this last session to increase the exemption for multifamily to 200. So part of this is there is, as you know, a lot of movement in the state to try and increase housing production. And so I just wanted to throw that on the table so that you were aware of it.
Go ahead, Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah. With that, it sounds like that the SEPA requirement really generally, if it's going with the code, in the long run, it doesn't make any difference for us.
It's not going to generate any additional conditions, most likely.
So I don't really have a problem with it being 60. However, the proposed noticing threshold should once again be with anything with multifamily. Should be any multifamily, there should be a notice posted.
And we can do either of those two. This is really the time to be having these kind of conversations.
So what you're proposing is you're okay with 60, but instead of the threshold being 20, it's just number 1.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any multifamily, that there needs to be
Full public
noticing there. The reason I don't, hey, I'm not in favor of them, but if it's not going to make any difference in the long run, I mean, I don't see a reason to have them do something that isn't going to make any difference anyway. But the public needs to know about it.
And can you clarify the comment on 60? If anybody came down to our department right now and said, I'm going to put in 60 apartments, it's just automatic?
No, they still need to meet every code that's in our code. So, setbacks, building heights, parking requirements, stormwater, traffic, all of those things still have to happen. Design guidelines, modulation on buildings, open space, all of those things that are in our code right now still have to happen. But like what we do right now for SEPA, is, are there any impacts to any critical areas? And this would have to be an area where there wouldn't be critical areas.
Okay. I agree with you there, Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah.
Mr. Tran is okay with that, so let's move to 11.
Okay. Number 11. Oh, good gosh.
You got lots of words.
I didn't know how to summarize this. My apologies, Council. So here's the story. I'll try and give you a short brief. This is one coming from Olympia. And what it is, it's hitting our definition for family. So we used to basically have a very short is that a family can be no more than 5, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot more language there, but just that. Section 6 of, and gross second substitute House Bill or Senate Bill 5235 states, a code city may not regulate or limit the number of unrelated persons that may occupy a household or dwelling unit. So that says our old definition doesn't work. And so we looked around for any other cities that might have done something other than just say, family is any number of people living in a house, which seemed way too vague. So we came up with, we actually found Bellevue had actually some language in their code. And so this is where we started, was with Bellevue's language. But this gives the city at least a little bit of power to regulate the number of people that happen to be residing in a household if it's starting to not feel like a single unit. I'm sorry for that language. Yes.
Can I just jump in
Please.
just to add a little bit there? So speaking very broadly, we can't regulate the number of people that live together in a household, like Keith said. And the significance here is what is a single family residence and what is something more than a single family residence, to the point it becomes multifamily, for instance. And so if we can't, under state law, regulate the number of people that can live together, one of the few tools we have in order to prevent a 18 people, 20 people living together in a single family house situation, one of the few ways we can do that is by regulating, instead of the number, regulating the nature of the way they live together. And so that's what this is an attempt to do, is an attempt to regulate the nature of the way a group of people live together. And depending on the nature of that, it might be single family, just one family, or it might be more than one family. And if it constitutes more than one family, then that's a use that would have to be in a multifamily area, not in a single family area.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
When we had an issue several years ago when an apartment multifamily development came on board, and we had multiple families living in one unit. And so we said no more than 5, whatever. Doesn't it depend also on the square footage of because for fire code and that?
There's still a occupancy maximum that a structure can sustain. And so the state statute does not undo that.
Okay.
So whatever those building or fire code limits are, those still exist. So you could not pack an unreasonable number of people into one structure. But it's now limited by those codes and not the zoning code.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember President.
So I'm trying to understand, thank you. So I'm a out-of-town corporation, and I bought a house. And I'm intending to remodel this house so it houses unrelated individuals. And, because your code isn't telling me, or I'm not understanding the code. So we do all use the kitchen, we do all use the main living room, but they all live in separate rooms. And it could be multiple rooms depending on how big this structure is. We've seen some pretty big structures that have a lot of rooms that still use communal kitchens and communal living area. So how do we limit that?
I think I'll take a first stab at it,
Yes.
Keith, and then if you'd like to add something in. I think the idea here is there are a number of criteria that the city can look at to determine whether a specific situation that you're talking about is a single family or the equivalent of a single family, or is not the equivalent of a single family. And so just to use, for instance, an example in the list here, one of the factors that we'd look at is whether an individual's relationship constitutes a permanent living arrangement or is instead a framework for transient living. And so the application of that specific one would be say there are people living in each one of the rooms and they live there for 2 weeks and then they leave, and then another person comes in and stays there for a month and leaves. In other words, it's constantly turning over in terms of the people who are living in that structure. That would be a factor that would suggest that that is not people living together, the equivalent of a family. So that would be, that under our definition, that would mean that that was multifamily and not allowed in a single family area.
So what, we shut that down then, that house?
Correct. So then, similar to a question we had before, the mechanism for dealing with that would be through code enforcement, either through a complaint from a neighbor saying, you know, there are 60 different people who've lived here over the course of the last couple months. There's 25 cars that are parking there, you know, that sort of thing. And then code enforcement would look into it, determine if there's a violation, and then enforce that way.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilmember Norton.
So this would apply to Oxford Homes. We used to have one here in Federal Way, and it was fabulous. We never had any problems with them. A lot of the people who lived there for the whole 10 years that we actually owned the property. And we did register it as a rental, and there were 6 people living there, and it was a 6-bedroom house, and they all shared the same kitchen and living space. So I am aware of quite a few homes in Federal Way that are used for recovery, that have more than 5 people living in them, and I think that they're essential to our community. There's also harm reduction homes here that are used for women who are like escaping domestic violence or who are trying to get off drugs. So how is this going to affect those organizations that they're in residential areas? I mean, and if you're not causing trouble or bothering the neighbors, is this something that could possibly be detrimental to those organizations?
Great and important question. Those more specific uses, in other words, non-standard residential uses, for instance, transitional housing, substance abuse facilities, those sorts of things are more specific uses that are outlined in our code. And so they would not be prevented or allowed based off of this family definition. Okay. To come back to your original question, which was, let's say I was renting a single family house out to 6 different rooms. They were all using a shared kitchen, using shared appliances, and they were long-term residents and it was a stable composition. That's factor 6, by the way. That does not change from year to year. That situation sounds like something that would constitute a single-family use under the definition we've applied here. I do want to caution that there aren't bright line rules in this definition, so it's not as if you get 7 people and all of a sudden that immediately becomes multifamily, and it's not as if people are staying there for 11 months and 30 days, and those people aren't, long enough term residents to count, whereas people who stay there for 12 months and 2 days, that's long enough to count. There aren't bright lines in this definition, but it tries to balance those things as best we can.
Okay, it sounds like we're okay with moving to the next one, correct? Okay, let's go to number 12.
Home stretch. Current code, this is on boundary line adjustments. And boundary line adjustment is you've got 2 lots, and all you're going to do is move 1 line. You're not creating a new lot. You're basically just moving a line or multiple lines in some cases. So there are 3 criteria currently under scope. One is you cannot create an extra lot. The second is you cannot make a lot too small for zoning. And the third is you cannot reduce property setbacks or exceed lot coverage. Okay, so that's what's in code now. The proposal is to add number 4 and number 5. Number 4, such alteration shall not adversely affect storm drainage, water supply, existing or future sanitary sewage disposal, and access easements for vehicles, utilities, and, that should say fire protection. Number 5, I'm not sure what IR protection is, but actually could have a good conversation about that. Number 5, such alteration shall not circumvent city code requirements associated with a land division approval or an obligation to pay latecomers fees. All right. So again, these are clearly just trying to make it clear of what's allowed within and this is part of the scope. So you have to satisfy these criteria to be allowed to do a boundary line adjustment. Otherwise, it would kick it up to one of our bigger processes.
Any questions? Seeing that this doesn't have any, we'll move to, is that the last one? Or is there a
So
13?
my last slide,
Okay.
Committee Chair, is options considered: adopt the proposed ordinance. Number 2, do not adopt the proposed ordinance and provide direction to staff. Mayor's recommendation is 1, and and the city attorney are here, and EJ are here for additional questions if you have any.
Okay. Let me see if I can sum this tally up. If you go back to 2 and the very early one, the 2 was one, and I think I was the only one on another one that had any questions. So when we move this forward to consent agenda, I guess that's where we would move it to. If we take-
First, it would go to
if-
first reading.
Right, but I mean, if we make it to the next step,
Yeah.
okay, out of committee here, it would be wise to break it up so that somebody doesn't have to pull. We've agreed on 10 out of the 12 is kind of my consensus here, right? And I'm probably going to be the only one that's going to pull one and say, hey, wait a minute, I don't think we should do this. So if you could kind of move this to go to the first reading so that we can easily move 10 of the 12, and it makes it very simple, and then we could have some discussion on the other ones that have hair around them, or the council. Does that make sense what I'm saying, EJ?
It makes sense. I might have to defer to the attorney how to turn that into a motion.
Okay.
Well, thanks, EJ. I think that you could move to forward approval of specific items by number. And then I think for one of them, I heard it, I believe, and this was number, which one is it, 10? I think 10, that was the one that concerned the multifamily noticing with the SEPA stuff. I think for that.
I think we're past that.
Okay.
We're okay with that.
Okay, in that case, I believe, I'm looking over EJ's shoulder at his list, I believe item 2 was the only item that was not generally agreed upon. So I think we could move to forward the ordinance, and particularly sections 1 and then 3 through 12 to first reading, and then you
And
could.
I would prefer if you'd pull number 3. I think that was the other one that I'm going to talk about when we get to first reading. So if you,
Yeah, I think in some ways 3 is contingent on 2 because it's contingent on who the decision maker is in the discussion in 2, so.
Okay.
So in that case, it would be 1 and 4 through 12 that we'd move forward. And then, I guess you could table the other 2 at this point, I think. Thoughts, EJ?
Yeah, and the one thing to clarify, so 10, there was a recommendation that I heard from the council to forward it, but to change the notice requirements from the 20 to
Right,
0.
okay.
So
Yeah,
I think it does have to be handled.
okay, well,
Yeah, and-
uniquely, if that's the will of the council.
I agree with you. Oops, excuse me. Let's pull the ones that had discussion. Number 10 were the notice agreement instead of 20
So I-
was 0.
So I think your motion could read, I move to forward items 1, 4 through 9, 11, and 12 to first reading at the, I don't have the meeting date in front of me, because I don't have the actual agenda.
With item 10, can we move to forward it with that change?
Correct, and then the second thing would be to move to forward item 10 as amended orally,
Yeah.
Okay.
and then recommend to not move the other 2 forward at this time.
So it would be 3 individual
three
motions
things
that
in
you
a
would be voting on.
We can move the other ones forward for discussion, but not on the first read.
Absolutely. So
Okay.
if that's the desire of the council, the cleanest way to do it is as 3 motions. 1 for all the ones that are straightforward.
Yep.
1 for the one that has an oral amendment, which is item 10, and then the third motion would just be the remaining 2.
Correct. So who from on this committee understands that and wants to make that motion to move it forward?
Let me see your,
My notes, you, could you,
so moved as was just explained by our staff.
can you
Or-
prepare the motion so that we can,
Yeah, so the first motion is going to be, I move to forward items 1, 4 through 9, and 11 and 12.
So moved.
Second.
okay, it's been moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
So our next script,
I move to forward item 10 to ordinance as orally amended to change the notice requirement to 0.
So moved.
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And then
Okay.
I think your third motion, which you may have to correct me on this one, is I move to forward items 2 and 3 for discussion to the full council as part of the ordinance.
I think that would, I would agree to move that motion forward. Is there a second?
So moved, or second, yeah. Okay, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, now we're gonna move, thank you very much for your presentation and your assistance in walking us through this.
Thank you all.
Okay, we'll now move to item F, which is the project update on Sound Transit projects. There is no action on this, this is information only.
All right. Good evening, Chair Dovey, committee members, council members, council president, and deputy mayor. My name is Ryan Medlin. I'm the city liaison to Sound Transit, and I'm here to provide the monthly update. All right, starting with the Federal Way Link extension north of the city center area, wall construction, column work, utility work remains ongoing. They're currently working on some storm and water line work near South 298th Street along I-5. They'll also be working in the Mark Twain Elementary area in coordination with the school district to take advantage of spring break for PSE electric line relocation that needs to happen. The next girder delivery in the city is going to be for one of the bridges that crosses Military Road. This is where Military Road crosses under I-5, just south of 304th Street, with the other Military Road crossing under I-5 up by South Star Lake, likely to follow. But this next phase of girders, I would expect it could come in by the end of this month. In the city center area, they're working on utilities in two areas mainly. One's around the immediate building of the future station to make way for the footings that they're planning to pour this month. The second that they are looking to start as early as the middle or end of this month is along 21st Avenue. That one is targeted at a sewer line relocation that has to occur with the sewer line that currently crosses through their site. They have to relocate it to its new permanent location in order to remove the old one. Construction at 21st and South 316 is continuing. I believe by the end of this week, the first parts of the new detention vault that's going in under that west garage entrance will go in. And then once they finish installing that vault, they'll start mobilizing cranes and other equipment to begin on the foundation piles for that future garage extension. And then also towards the end of this month, I would expect we'll start to see them doing some prep work for the capital that'll go on that column on the north side of 320th, which will be one of the last pieces they need to get that girder across 320th. Some non-construction notes I wanted to bring up is obviously tomorrow you'll see Sound Transit staff at a study session. They'll be presenting on their the process that they follow to make the transit-oriented development surplus parcels eventually available to future development. They haven't done that yet. It's a very early discussion on the process and the public participation form of it. And also I wanted to mention that Sound Transit Board, I've heard that they're expected to take up station naming at their meeting in May. They will also be doing a project update. Email was actually supposed to be last week, but hasn't come out yet, unless it came up in the last 5 minutes. But the station names are now in response to amended policy that they had adopted in October of 2021. Regards to the OMF, there's no real update since our last meeting. We're still working on the FEIS. There's doing some soil samples and geotechnical work around the Belmore Mobile Home Park and Christian Faith Center as part of that, but no actions or new information to provide. Tacoma Dome Link Extension, there's also no update since the last meeting. And with that, I will take any questions.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. I have two questions. One, when the train goes across 320th, will the bridge that it goes, that the train runs, will it be similar to what it looks like that crosses from Marlene's over to the station?
It'll be the same construction. I guess I would note that the bridges that cross 23rd or 317th aren't completed right now. They're set up so that they can work and lay rail on top of them. So they'll look a little bit more polished when they're done, but yes, it's the same means of construction.
So we had asked, when this first came up a few years ago, if perhaps on the bridge across 320th, it could say, "Welcome to Federal Way" or something, and which would probably be considered public art. I've never seen anything come out of that. I still think that instead of just having something that's not very attractive as you enter into our city, it would be really nice to have something very decorative on there that looks better than what I've seen Sound Transit do with their bridges. And secondly, what's going to happen with getting the trains under the power lines?
So I'll answer to the comment to the first one is we don't have anything in our current development agreement to require that they provide that signage at this time. More as a side note, there will be future discussions with Sound Transit, so if you think it's a good idea, I would encourage you not to forget it because we have 2 other projects coming down the road in the future.
I won't.
As far as the power lines, at their March board meeting, they had a motion to execute an additional funding agreement with Bonneville Power Administration, who owns the power lines and will ultimately do the design and work regarding elevating those lines, but the initial funding agreement would remain in kind of that environmental evaluation, and similar to how they provide funding to the city for us to do our work, they're providing funding to Bonneville Power Administration for them to do the evaluation that they need for that work.
Will that impact the view of Mount Rainier from the PAC?
In the DEIS, they are expected to have a rendering that kind of gives an idea of what that impact will be. I mean, as far as what the changes will be, they'll be swapping out, I believe, 4 of the towers for slightly taller ones. So in terms of an impact of more towers, no. In terms of some of the towers being taller, yes.
One more question. When, at some time in the past, I thought that the name for the station had been already selected. Didn't we have some kind of a discussion about that?
You did, and that's why I mentioned the October 2021 policy change that the Sound Transit Board adopted, because the station name what you're remembering is, they did public outreach for, I think, 4 station names at the time. Federal Way Transit Center Station, Federal Way City Center, Downtown Federal Way, and I forget the 4th. But this council did vote in support of the Federal Way Transit Center Station, in recognition of that receiving the most public votes in favor. The big issue with the new policy that Sound Transit has implemented is that they've set a maximum of 3 words in a station name, which when your city name is 2 words and you have to have the city name is problematic.
Why
So-
not?
So,
Oh, man, somebody needs to get a life.
so if we can we can send supplemental comments to the city, if that's something the council would want me to come back and present, because the May meeting is not here. I don't know what the final list of names they're going to put in their project update email. I know it's not going to be as extensive public outreach, so, I mean, to recap a conversation, one of the points of frustration I identified is if we go back to the original list of 4, the only one that really meets their new standards is downtown Federal Way or Federal Way downtown.
Oh my gosh, it's always something with Sound Transit. They, always something. But I appreciate that you talk to us and you're so honest and forthright with what's going on. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so as far as the station naming, if it's something the council wants, when I do see it and get an idea of what those names are, I can send an update email. Usually it comes through EJ or the mayor.
Yeah, it
Or I
would be
can vet
nice
it by
to know.
them, and then it'll be posted on their website too. Or if you get the emails, you'll get it just the same as I do. And if you have a request for any kind of action related to the station naming for public comment or for me to send to them, please let EJ or the mayor know.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, Council President.
Thank you. Quick question. With all the money that ARPA funds provided, that means that we will be finishing on time without a problem? I mean, there'll be enough money to complete our station by 2024?
Right now, the station is on schedule for 2024. It's fully funded, so the money wouldn't be behind any delays. If there was a delay, it wouldn't be money.
So the additional money coming would then help to extend it to Tacoma?
Correct. As well as to the north and west Seattle.
Which I think is going to be 2030 for Tacoma?
2032. They
2032.
pushed it off 2 years officially for the COVID delays. It's still early, and I think people are still recovering, so whether there'll be further delays remains to be seen.
Okay. And the art project for the transit garage, what happened with that?
Are we referring to the one that everybody liked
The
on the side of the
upside-down
garage or the elephant?
Yeah, right.
With regards to the elephant, the last update I received is they're still doing some kind of art community outreach. I believe it was the Korean community artist was the last outreach group that I was made aware of, and fall of 2022 is the earliest I'm told to expect a new design. And as far as what the council would see is I've still make the request every once in a while to remind them that we want a summary of the public outreach feedback that they've heard since that time, before we get to the concept drawing. So I would expect that
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you for your report. Unless I see none. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so now we move to item number 4, which is other. Is there anything from the group over on the dais over there that needs to be brought up? Okay, so I would like to add one thing under 5, which is future discussion that we'll talk about. EJ is, we received this petition of 260 some people or 30 that have signed it. In the future, can we schedule in one of our land use meetings here a discussion on the topic so that the current members understand what the question is that's been brought forward by the public, and we get an update?
Sure.
Okay, this was back in 2019 that it went through, and it'd be just good to have an upgrade.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, bye.
We are now adjourned.
See everyone tomorrow.